now we'll open it up for questions. Again, as I said this morning, it'd be great if we could get some questions from the younger members of the audience as well. We look forward to your questions to the panelists. Don't be shy.
First of all, thank you very much for giving this global information, sir. Actually, my question goes to Dr. Jayanath Kolamage. Sir, in your presentation, you told that Sri Lanka is in a strategical position which we have to interconnect and engage with the India, China, Japan, as well as Middle East economies. And I want to know about, sir, what is the role of Hambantota Port that gaining own economic advantages by dealing with major economies?
Thank you for the most difficult question. Well, I look at Hambantota Port, I think we have to look at Hambantota Port as a port and also as a strategic entity. And I think it's quite logical to have a port in Hambantota, and we have been talking about a requirement of having a port for decades, and it did happen. So now we have to make use of the port. And unfortunately, because nowadays the shipping is not really doing well after 2008, and it's only picking up this year slightly. So we cannot, there is a saying, governments can build ports, but it is the shipping companies which decide whether to come to this port or not. And there are many examples in the world, ports were built, no ships came, sufficient number. So here we have a port, and we have to make it work, and we have to find a partner to make it work, right? So only thing is, when we are we free to choose a partner in this dynamic situation in the Indian Ocean is the question that we always face. Unfortunately, countries like Sri Lanka are not in a position to make decisions purely based on economic and maritime terms. We need to consider the strategic implications of our decisions. Now, if we make the decision, a decision to antagonize a major power, then we will be at the receiving end. So we have to make this port work. We had to have a partner to make it work. Now I think the deal is signed anyway, so there is no point in discussing right or wrong of that. So we have to make it work, and I think others should understand that, you take Sri Lanka, we suffered for 30 long years, and our economy went back. If you look at 1960s, many developed countries today, they were far behind Sri Lanka. So can we wait until all these major players sort out their strategic competition and the differences to develop? I think the answer is no. So that is why I think we should try to leverage this location and do a bigger role than the size of our country. I think all the speakers highlighted that fact. We need a clear vision. So we must do things for the right reason and not for the wrong reason. Thank you.
My question is for the bottom trawling and poaching. In fact, there are many other things that you should consider in your findings. Have you done any studies about the Wedge Bank and Pedro Bank and the issues related to their artisanal fishing and the historical fishing rights issues?
Can you, it's about in answering this question, I would like to say that I have, in my paper, we have concentrated on the human implications and the environmental implications of bottom trawling, because regarding the defense and the other factors, there has been conducted many research papers and many, even Commander Joseph has conducted a paper on in a previous IRC session. And so my research paper is basically focused on the human and environmental implications. So we have, I have mentioned those customary fishing methods and all, and we have discussed on that part as well in the paper. So the speech was a conclusion of simple version of the paper.
I'm of the opinion that some of the recommendation when I went through, I found, the recommendation should be a little broader, and having, Marian, Dr. Marian probably be much better way of explaining. Like the approach should be different. The approach with bilateral approach, I don't think, because we are trying it so much and so far, nothing has happened.
Yeah.
Now it is a IUU, illegal, unreported, unauthorized fishing, IUU, and it's an international issue. So this is a time that we should look on the market measures, the port measures, and of course flag measures you cannot count, isn't it? We cannot count the flag measures because these are smaller, private fishing crowds. So at least the at least the port measures and market measures has to be concerned to prevent IUU. So discouraging fishing, because if there is no market, if there is no way to market these products or the catch, it is one way that we can prevent and stop them. I think Dr. Marian can say something much better.
Thank you, Admiral. And I'll make the intervention very brief, but I do agree and I see where you're coming from, that in issues such as in the Pak Bay that has such a long-standing sort of historical issue, both in the political side of things, that sometimes it's difficult to resolve matters just, just basically looking at the environmental or the resource aspect of it, because also under international law, there's really no accepted definition of traditional fishing. So it's really up to the bilateral or both countries to define what, traditional fishing means. So, once IUU fishing can be considered legal on the other side of the border, so what Sri Lanka may consider as legal fishing for its Sri Lankan fishermen could be considered IUU on the side of India, and we're talking about the same. We're talking about the same waters. And I guess what the Admiral is saying is that there are other measures in place now within the context of international fisheries law that we can look at that doesn't only address maritime boundary or territorial issues, but looks at the broader scope of port state measures and market state measures that would help a fisherman from both countries. And I think the next session will also look at some of these measures in relation to the dispute.
Thank you.
My question is to Lieutenant Commander Roshan Kulatunga. With regard to mini MDAs, it is good thing that to have MDAs established, and you are considering the naval fleet assets and air surveillance, fisheries department input, and such things to get the awareness of the maritime domain. But do you like to consider the fishermen? Now, fisheries department, they get the input from the trawlers, not from the small fishermen. But there are thousands and thousands fishermen going out to the sea in the morning and come back. And if you can get the fishermen also into the, to get input for your awareness, and also the coastal residents, I think maritime domain awareness can be more improved. Your comment, please.
Thank you very much for your question, sir. In my research, I have mainly concentrated about the strategic level design which suit to the northwestern part of the country. In that, collecting of maritime intelligence and surveillance data into one core unit is the main important factor which I have considered. In that case, the tactical level, intelligent personnel can engage with, as you said, with the fishermen as well as the fishing boats which going out to for their fishing activities. So it is like a chain. The intelligence data will be collected, and in Northwestern Naval Command there is one staff intelligence officer. So under him there are many intelligent sailors or soldiers. Like that, other intelligence departments and other components, maritime security, civil and military, are engaging with these activities. So they are the person who contacting these fishermen and collecting data. As you correctly said, sir, these things should come into the Maritime Domain Awareness Center. So it will come as a chain, person to person, and it will climb up into the strategic level. That's the answer, sir.
Thank you.
If I may add a point to that, I think we had a solid fishing network during the time of war. Eyes and ears out in the high seas were the multi-day fishing trawlers. So they did a remarkable job reporting whenever they get a echo. I think it's still working, and it's one way of doing it. Thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah, Captain Jason Sears. I'm the Australian Defence Advisor to Sri Lanka. This is a question for Admiral Kalamagay and Captain Joseph and possibly Admiral McQuilkin. Captain Joseph said that there's a need for a clear or strong national maritime strategy. Admiral Kalamagay said there's a need for a clear vision about where Sri Lanka is going in international relations. Is this a task you see that the government should have of Sri Lanka to tell the defence forces and neighbours what Sri Lanka's strategy post-war is, whether it be a national security strategy, a national defence strategy, which then flows down into maritime, right down to maritime domain awareness, right down to how you react with a neighbour like India on fisheries. And I guess are there moves afoot for the government to have such a strategy in the post-war? Because I see a Navy commander with a 20-ship Navy by 2025. I hear Army commander talk about a capacity-based army. Air Force commander talk about new jets and maritime surveillance. But I'm just wondering, how does it all come together so that neighbours such as Australia and great powers understand Sri Lanka's approach? So I guess it's a broader question about a strategy there behind Sri Lanka's actions.
Thank you. So I'll go first. You are right. As a country, as an island nation in an important location in the Indian Ocean, we need a maritime strategy. And unfortunately, we have not really seen a clear maritime strategy for a long time. And we have suffered. In the history, all invasions have come across the sea. And the 30-year-old war, the development of the LTTE was mainly due to the lack of governance in the ocean, or the exploitation of the ocean by the LTTE. And quite frankly, we underestimated their strategy, and we did not have an effective counter strategy for a very long time. On the other hand, the LTTE made the maritime strategy as a key component of their grand strategy, and it worked for them. So what you have mentioned here is in the absence of an overall strategy, where the maritime strategy is a component, our armed forces have taken the initiative to develop their strategies, so it is bottom up, whereas it should have been the top down, where we have a grand strategy and that filters down to the air, land and maritime strategy. At least the military has taken the initiative and they have designed their strategy for 2025, 2030, where we want to be. So I think this is something we need to work on, to have a grand maritime strategy, where we want to be as a maritime nation. I mean, from time to time we hear vision statements coming from the government that we want to be a maritime hub, but simply saying we want to be a maritime hub is not enough. How do we get there? What are the requirements for us to be a maritime hub? I mean, if you look at the maritime law in this country, is totally outdated, and we have not been able to modify it suitably.